Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. Sorry for the absence if you're watching these videos as they come out. I was away in the United States having a trip, seeing family, and attending, or in fact, actually kind of conducting a wedding. More stories on that on my Twitch stream if you're interested in popping by. But today we're going to be focused on potions because there have been 4 new potions added in the 1.21 update, which I think deserve a bit of our attention. So we're going to gather up some nether wart. I got my fortune pickaxe, so we get a little bit extra. And fortunately for 3 out of these 4 potions, we don't even need to go that far because they require ingredients which actually have been present in the game for a while. There's only one of the 4 potions that requires you to have visited a trial chamber and defeated a breeze, because that one requires a breeze rod. But the rest of them are relatively mundane components. I'm going to grab a breeze rod out of the barrel where I've been storing those so we can make a few more of those. Now we need to get hold of a slime block, which is in plentiful supply over here thanks to the fact that we've had a slime farm for a little while now. We need a single block of stone. That is right, stone can now be used to brew potions, bizarre though that sounds. And the last thing is one that you might not have gathered too many of, and that is cobwebs. I'm actually not sure where, if anywhere, I have kept cobwebs in this setup. I would have assumed they were above string, but it doesn't look like I've got any of them there. Did they end up in the miscellaneous chest at any point? Nope, doesn't look like it. Well, at least they are simple enough to get hold of if you have a set of shears and you've discovered an abandoned mine shaft, or even a zombified village, or anywhere else that the game naturally generates cobwebs. Perhaps I left some here in my old storage system. Perhaps they're around here in the organic section. Yes, okay, I knew we had some somewhere. It was kind of absurd that we wouldn't have gotten cobwebs at some stage during this adventure. So we're going to pop into our little brewing station here, which I've automated to some extent a little while ago by putting a hopper in the top so that the ingredients can be fed in from above. Let's get a few bottles and let's get this started. Oh, I left myself a cobweb in there, of course. So naturally, we're going to feed a nether wart into the top first, and let's start off with a slime block to create a potion of oozing. And unless you feel like pranking your server mates, these are probably not potions that you will want to drink yourself. So we're going to grab some gunpowder and we're going to turn this into a splash potion, because the effect of a potion of oozing is much like the effect you might have found happening in trial chambers if you've been exploring those already. Anytime an entity with the oozing effect dies, it will produce a couple of slimes. To give you a quick example of this effect in action, we can head up here onto the mountain where a cow and a chicken have been reenacting a Nickelodeon show. I'm going to lure the chicken slightly closer to the cow so we can splash both of them in unison, because of course anything caught within a few blocks of this potion's radius is going to be affected, including myself if I stand a little bit too close. But as you can see from the particles now, the slime has affected both the chicken and the cow, and if I kill the chicken right now, it's going to spawn 2 medium-sized slimes, although one of them did end up spawning inside the blocks of the hill here and has already been eliminated. The other one spawned nearby, and as we pick up all of the slime balls we get from those, it looks like we got enough to reproduce a slime block, so we're getting decent return on our investment just by killing a couple of mobs. The effect will last for 3 minutes at the center of the splash potion's radius, so we can kill this cow and we get basically the same thing happening. The slimes will obviously split up into between 2 and 4 little slimes, and those are the ones that drop the slime balls. So as long as you make sure there are plenty of those around, there we go, 24 slime balls. So that's enough to make at least 2 slime blocks and change. Which means that as long as you have a looting 3 on your sword and you manage to kill the slimes with it, splashing even one entity with a potion of oozing is likely to get a decent return on your investment. We've got basically 2.5 slime blocks there. Now, interestingly enough, even though I was kind of counting on this effect being the case in trial chambers, slimes themselves are immune to the oozing effect. So since they naturally produce more slimes when you divide them up, when you kill them, you cannot splash slimes with the oozing effect and get more slimes out of it, because that would create this kind of perpetual cycle, I think, considering that you could then splash baby slimes and each of those would produce 2 medium slimes, which would produce more baby slimes. It just stops the potion effect being recursive. But this potion gives us the advantage of being able to farm slimes basically anywhere, when slimes were often an elusive mob and it was difficult to get hold of a lot of slime at short notice. Once you have 1 slime block and the ingredients to brew some potions, you should be able to produce slime anywhere, making basically any mob farm now a slime farm. It is also worth noting that the player does not have to be the cause of the entity's death. If I splash a bunch of the mobs inside of my mob farm here with the oozing potion, a bunch of them will now come down here and die in the campfires, and once they end up dying in there, they should hopefully produce some slimes up in there. You notice a couple of slime particles, although that might be generated by me. And we've had some slime balls come through to the chest here, which means that the mobs that died in the mob farm there have been killed by the campfires, have released some slimes that immediately get killed by the campfires themselves, and now we have a few slime balls waiting for us in the chest there. So if you wanted to modify your mob farm a little bit, we could look into automated potion brewers in future, and a mechanism that would, on a timer, similar to the timer we have around here, splash some of these platforms with these oozing potions, allowing slimes to be produced as part of a general mob farm. I might actually end up doing that at some stage in future. We might also add a different slice of the filter here for it, but it seems like kind of a fun notion to have a bunch of slime be produced here, and you could even auto-craft the slime back into slime blocks to refill the potion brewing setup and guarantee that slime potions could be produced here in perpetuity. For now, we're going to tuck away this splash potion of oozing next to the ones that I already brewed up for, I think, the 101 questions episode. And with 3 more water bottles, we're going to move on to our next potion, which is going to be a potion of weaving. Now, we're going to turn these potions of weaving into splash potions because their primary purpose, much like potions of oozing, is to be splashed on mobs and have them produce cobwebs on death, as opposed to slime in the oozing potion. Of course, that aspect is pretty straightforward. There's a little cluster of mobs here that I'll try and hit each of them with the weaving potion, and you'll notice cobweb particles coming off of them now. I'm also going to clear out anything that may obstruct the cobwebs from generating around some of these mobs, so any grass or flowers or whatever, anything that might not be replaced by the cobwebs, will probably have to go before I kill this sheep. And the sheep should produce a couple of cobwebs on death. So once again, this potion is very renewable. All you need to do is get a couple of cobwebs and you'll be able to shear those. Likewise, we're going to break all of the flowers and stuff from around this cow, kill the cow with our netherite sword, and on the site of its death, a couple of cobwebs will emerge. And last of all, I have to track down where that chicken that we just splashed with a potion went. There we go, right over here. Just kill that, and on the site where it dies, not necessarily on the site where you killed it, we get 2 more cobwebs, bringing us to a total of 6, so we have plenty more cobwebs that we can turn into potions of weaving. But unlike the oozing potion, this one actually has a hidden side that is of benefit to the player if the player gets splashed with this effect. Normally, cobwebs are a pain to travel through. They slow you down to an absurd degree, which can be very difficult when you're navigating things like abandoned mineshafts. But if you splash yourself with a potion of weaving, or if you happen to get splashed with one anyway, you end up moving slightly faster in cobwebs once you have the weaving effect. This will also mean that you end up generating cobwebs if you die, but it's unlikely that this weaving effect will ever be super necessary for the player to have on them, considering that you can break cobwebs using a sword or gather them using shears. But with that said though, weaving potions are now a renewable source of cobwebs, something that we did not have before. You basically had to go further and further afield to find abandoned mine shafts if you were in the hope of gathering large quantities of cobwebs, whereas now you simply need to once again set up a mob farm, whether it's a passive or hostile mob farm, splash the mobs with the potion and receive those cobwebs. Like the potion of oozing, it doesn't matter what kills the mob either, although the player will typically need to be around to gather the cobweb using shears. Cobwebs can of course be broken through other means, like buckets of water for example, but they will only drop string if broken that way, so shears are really a requirement in order to gather cobwebs as an item. Our next set of potions is the one involving the breeze rod. These are going to be potions of wind charged, and since this is another effect that applies on death, we're going to use this as a splash potion once again. Also, another quick note, since we've been going through these, it isn't possible to intensify the effect of any of these potions, nor is it possible to extend the duration of any of these potions. So each of them applies for a 3-minute duration maximum and only has 1 level to the potion. There is no wind charging 2 or oozing 2 that produces a greater effect. And in the case of the wind charged potion, that effect is to create something similar to the impact of a wind charge at the site of a mob's death. Once again, that happens at the site that the entity lands, not the site that the entity ends up getting killed. So if a pig falls a few blocks off a cliff like this after it's been splashed with wind charged, you're unlikely to feel the effect since it's not dying right next to you. Although any other mobs or dropped item entities can still be moved around by that wind charge, so it's worth noting that that could potentially end up throwing things into difficult positions like lava or something if you ended up doing that next to some mobs that were nearby a lava pool. Once again, this effect just occurs on death. It doesn't matter what the source of that death was, doesn't have to be killed by the player, and the player can be affected by this as well, although once again, it'll just produce an explosion when you die, which might scatter your items even further than they typically go. It won't destroy them, however. Wind charges can be used to move items around, but they cannot be used to destroy anything. They're just little knockback projectiles, really, and I have yet to find a situation in which the wind-charged potion is anything but an inconvenience to the player. In trial chambers, it happens a lot, and it just produces a lot of confusing little explosions that knock you around and make it more difficult to fight stuff. But in terms of player versus player combat, or even PvE, it's not really going to have a great deal of useful applications. But I have saved perhaps one of the more interesting ones for last. We're going to brew up another awkward potion using netherwort, and we're going to add the stone block to that to get infested potions. And once again, we're going to turn these into splash potions, but these are potions that can be drunk by the player, because the effect of infested potions does not just happen on the entity's death, the way that the last 3 potions have done. Potions of infestation give a 10% chance to spawn a couple of silverfish when the entity is hurt, whenever you take damage or receive damage from a source. Basically, whenever you take damage, the effect has a chance to occur. A small chance, but still a chance. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to let it get dark and I'm going to trap a mob, because I think there are some situations in which we can really take advantage of this infested effect. These zombies over here should do, especially if one of them will pick up an item for us. Let's see if one of them wants to pick up some planks. Looks like they didn't want to, so I'm going to quickly grab a name tag. And with a little bit of effort here, I'm going to try my best to trap at least one zombie in this little 2x1 box here. There we go, we got both of them. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to make sure we name tag one of them so that that one will stay alive. We'll open up the side here so that we can see through to these 2 zombies. One of them is name tag bugged. We're going to go and get some sleep. And we're going to head over to the pumpkin farm in the morning to grab ourselves a carved pumpkin, which is going to be used to make a snow golem. And in the morning, one of our zombie friends has despawned, but the other one should still be roaming around inside this box. There we go. Let's quickly set up a piston, have him pushed over into a 1-block space. That'll make things slightly easier for us. And let's set up a snow golem a reasonable distance away from the zombie, so they're not going to interact directly, but we'll place our 2 snow blocks and a carved pumpkin on top. And once the snow golem detects the zombie, they'll throw snowballs at it. Mostly accurately, although sometimes it is going to miss. The cool thing about snowballs thrown by snow golems is that they don't actually deal any physical damage. Even though it looks like this zombie is taking damage, it's not receiving any points of damage. So even though it's getting pelted with snowballs from the snow golem, this zombie will remain alive. It's not taking any physical damage from this, which means we can throw this potion of infestation on it, and anytime it takes damage, there's a chance that it will produce silverfish, making this effectively a silverfish factory. You might think this is fairly pointless, because silverfish don't drop anything that's of use to the player. They don't have any useful mob drops. What they do have, however, is XP. Unfortunately, though, our snow golem is getting killed by a silverfish because it wasn't adequately protected from that, and it did pelt a silverfish with a snowball on the way out. But we can always rebuild the snow golem if we want to and give it some better protection against silverfish, and here's the idea. This zombie with a decent supply of these splash potions of infestation on a 3-minute timer could produce silverfish near infinitely, which would provide a decent source of XP for the player. Now, I've chosen a zombie because they're typically hostile mobs, they're antagonistic to the player. Some players have already figured out that since allays will naturally regenerate their health, having an allay be consistently damaged this way will produce a bunch of silverfish, and if you splash them with infested potions, get a bunch of allays in, something like a fire that's going to damage them perpetually, then they'll be able to re-heal themselves and constantly produce silverfish in the process, where the player can just stand nearby, swipe away at them, and that's another really solid XP farm. Personally, though, I don't really feel like treating allays that way. Even though I've got them in a Pez dispenser up here in the mountain, they at least aren't taking damage for the remainder of their lives. Here's a fun idea, though. Let's release this zombie and see if it taking fire damage generates any silverfish before it ultimately dies to sunlight exposure. Interestingly enough, there we go. It split a silverfish off from it by taking a point of fire damage, and it only did that once during that process, so perhaps that's not the most ideal way of generating silverfish. But yeah, food for thought. If you want a little XP farm, you could do a lot worse than brewing a potion up with a single piece of stone and getting yourself 3 infested splash potions that will give you 9 minutes of time to generate silverfish. You could definitely speed that process up by having a bunch of zombies trapped in a box and a bunch of snow golems pelting them, right? You could get a lot lot more silverfish that way very, very quickly. So hopefully some of that has piqued your interest as to the possibilities of these potions. The last thing I'm going to do in this episode is get an advancement that has just become slightly more difficult, or at least slightly more labor intensive, thanks to the fact that these 4 potions were added in the 1.21 update, and that is a Furious Cocktail, which is granted to the player for having every potion effect applied at the same time. Notice that this isn't every status effect though. There is a second hidden advancement that is effectively an offshoot of this one, which requires you to have every status effect applied at the same time, including the ones you can't get from potions, things like Mining Fatigue from Elder Guardians, Haste from a Beacon, Levitation from Shulkers, and Darkness from a Skulk Shrieker or the Warden. We're going to be attempting that another time because it obviously requires a lot of mobs or different elements to be brought together in the same place. It also requires you to have the Wither effect, which typically players get from a Wither Rose, and a couple of potion effects that are easiest acquired through Suspicious Stew, like Blindness. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time gathering up all of the splash potions that we've crafted today, and a bunch of splash versions of potions that I've crafted in the past, like Night Vision, Weakness, Slow Falling, and Strength. We're going to put a bunch of those into dispensers, press a button, and have all of the potion effects in the game applied to us at the same time. There are actually a couple of potions we can omit from this process, which are potions of healing and harming. Since those effects are instant, they don't have any kind of duration, and so they won't have any lasting effect on the player, meaning that they aren't required for this advancement. You will need a potion of the Turtle Master, which is possibly the most difficult of these to get since it requires breeding enough turtles to acquire a turtle shell helmet. We've covered that in previous episodes, so refer to that if you're not quite sure how to do it. If you still just need to make splash potions of these, remember that you can remove potions from the brewing stand and add in potions of different types and turn each of them into splash potions individually by applying a gunpowder, and it will probably help you to have a list of these potions available to you, or just keep track of them in a shulker box to make sure you don't have any duplicates. You might also want to have a bucket of milk handy just in case you find the different potion effects disorienting. They shouldn't end up killing you though, because while you are going to have poison and weakness, you're also going to have strength and regeneration, so the effects overlap and cancel each other out a little bit when applied to the player. You will need potions of leaping for this, so you will unfortunately have to go and kill some rabbits, and remember that an easy way of getting hold of rabbits is to hold a dandelion or a carrot in your offhand while swinging a sword in your main hand. The rabbits will just passively run up to you, and they'll be easier to dispatch than they are if they're jumping around everywhere wildly. It might also take several attempts to get a rabbit's foot, but consider this an opportunity to stock up on rabbit hide, because Mojang have said that bundles are being introduced to Bedrock Edition in future, which means they're coming to Java as well, and the current recipe for them does require rabbit hide. Although if you prefer not to kill rabbits or you simply can't find any, there is another alternative, which is to use a beacon. Beacons can be set up with the jump boost effect, which will allow you to acquire that effect. You could also get resistance from them, which would mean you can skip the potion of the Turtle Master by simply brewing a slowness potion, which are a lot easier to acquire. You just invert a swiftness potion using a fermented spider eye. In this case, I've had a hard time getting hold of rabbit's feet, so I'm going to apply jump boost using this beacon here. Even though the advancement says that you should have every potion effect applied at the same time, the source of the effect actually does not matter, so we can even give ourselves jump boost and regeneration using a beacon. If you wanted to get multiple beacons together, you could also apply speed, resistance, and strength the same way, and haste simply doesn't matter to this equation. Remember that you also need a potion of invisibility for this. That's another one that's inverted using a fermented spider eye, so we'll do that along with the swiftness potion, although I've already got a slowness potion in the form of potion of the Turtle Master. So there are 17 status effects that we need to apply to ourselves all at the same time, but we're going to manage to do this with just 14 potions, and here's how. We have the Infested, Weaving, Wind Charged, and Oozing potions, the 4 that we have covered today. Then we have the potion of the Turtle Master, which counts for 2 status effects in that they are slowness and resistance. We've got speed here, accompanied by slow falling, poison, and weakness. Then on the next row we have fire resistance, water breathing, night vision, invisibility, and strength. So that makes 15 status effects total applied by 14 potions, and the 2 that we don't have potions for here are jump boost and regeneration, both of which are covered by the beacon, so that makes a total of 17. Now, if we wanted to, we could simply open this shulker box, fill up our inventory with as many potions as we care to, throw them up in the air and have them land on our head for the maximum duration, but since some of them, like Potion of the Turtle Master, only have a duration of 40 seconds, I want to be relatively precise about applying these all at the same time, and so we're going to set up a series of dispensers to throw these potions at us right here next to the beacon so we can make sure we have those last two effects. To activate all of these potions at once, we're going to have 16 dispensers, 1 redstone dust, and a button. We're going to dig out these 4 spaces, fill those with dispensers. We're going to fill the row above that with dispensers as well, and each of those is going to be activated by this single piece of redstone dust and a block above that with a button on top of it. We're going to press that button and we'll hear all of those dispensers fire at once. If you're concerned about any of them not firing, simply place a couple of test objects in each of them to make sure that they've got the capacity to fire, but make sure you remove those before you start using the potions. There we go, a couple of those have fired, a couple of grass blocks have been ejected, that looks fine. The next set of dispensers is going to be placed on top of those, and then finally the last set of dispensers is going to be placed facing inwards like this. And now when I press this button, all 16 of those dispensers should activate. Once again, we can place a couple of items in each of them just to make sure that each of them is going to activate successfully when we press that button. I'll throw out any spider eyes I have here in my inventory and just make sure that we receive 3 of those. Yep, perfect, that seems like it's working just great. So all that remains to do is gather up all of these potions and systematically add them to each of the dispensers. You will have a couple of empty dispensers if you've done this exactly the same way I have with the beacon here, but theoretically if you brewed all 16 potions, you should be able to get 17 potion effects provided that you have the Potion of the Turtle Master, and if you overlap that with the slowness potion and just get resistance on the beacon, it'll be the same thing. But there should just be 2 more potions to place up here, making sure that we have 1 per dispenser. That all looks like it's gone well. So now in theory, all I should need to do is stand inside of this, hit this button, and receive the advancement. There we go, a Furious Cocktail, and your FOV is going to change. You'll feel a little bit weird for a while. Look at all these status icons piled up in my inventory. That is one heck of a lot of effects. But folks, that is where we're going to leave it for today. I'm weirdly invisible, but of course, I can drink that bucket of milk I brought with me and calm all of this chaos down. Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you've enjoyed revising these new potions with me and looking forward to finding some interesting uses for them in future. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.